or the 8 verses of mind training, basically the same thing. And I'm just wondering how your couple of weeks have been with we've finished 3 verses so far. I'm going to read those verses again when we start. The last one was about being vigilant every time a delusion arises in the mind. How is that going for you the last couple of weeks? Anybody remember that?
I've had a lot of time to practice it because I have the thoughts coming in my mind. So I go back to that tool. And it's like, okay, that's not reality. That's not the way it is. Go back, go back. It's just a constant practice. And I think, hopefully once we do it long enough, it will become more of a habit.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Thank you. Yeah. And it's also nice, in addition to the go back, is I've been just working. Watch it arise in my mind. I observe without getting involved in it. Like I'm observing, and I'll be like, okay, so there's frustration, or there's attachment. There, and then as the less I embellish and the less I just there, oh, that's not, and then it just goes more quickly, like that. But it's nice to be mindful of it, while it's happening, to kind of show up and be like, okay, there it is. I found that a helpful tool as well. Okay, well, welcome. Let's get started. I think, is this 7 to 8:30, Nicole? Okay, that's right, because I think something said 7 to 9. Wasn't sure how long, but I have it ready for 7 to 8:30. Of course, right when we're starting, the dogs next door are barking. I have this they're really sweet dogs, and my neighbors are wonderful. It's just been an interesting season, and let me call it the leaf blowing season. So my neighbor is a real enthusiast with his leaf blower. And if you're familiar with how, um, good evening, Beata, welcome. If you're familiar, leaf blowers are very loud, and I don't know how often much they use them where you're living, but we're just at the end of our leaf falling season of the trees. So I'm a raker, and I rake, and raking for me is silent, it's meditative, it gives me exercise. I like to go out there on a nice day. A lot of my neighbors blow, and it's easier for them. That's great, no problem. My dad, has an old leaf blower here I could use, but I'm not very good with them. I'm not very coordinated, and I don't like the noise. So every time I won't be here in this room that I'm sitting in to teach. Sometimes I'm not here all day, but I will come down to work, and every time I'll come down, and it might just be 2 hours. I'm gonna be, preparing this thing or some, is when he gets the leaf blower going. It's like clockwork. And I mean, right next door, right here. So, and he'll be blowing that side right when I'm like, I couldn't believe last night I suddenly decided, I took a break for a couple hours in the afternoon, came back. As soon as I came back, just, so I have a joke with my friend at the San Francisco Center, Venerable Carol. She runs the center there, and I've been helping her a bit. And I've been talking to her about the leaf blower. This is my practice. And so the other day, I suddenly called her, right? And she's like, "What's that noise?" And I said, "It's the leaf blower," like that. And she goes, "Oh," so suddenly I hear the dogs, but they're really great neighbors. So I'm fine with the dogs and the leaf blowing as long as you have nice neighbors, because sometimes you have a hassle with neighbors, and that's a wonderful thing I don't have to deal with. So welcome, everyone. And let's take a moment right now. We're talking about Lojong mind training. And let's bring ourselves here into the space and trying to let go those external distractions. And just find a comfortable position. And we're just going to do some reflection on the verses, the first 3 verses we've already covered. And you can lightly close your eyes. And just begin to deepen your respiration. Reflect on your purpose for being here right now. And consider how working with Lojong, with mind training, it's such an essential and significant way to shift our mind from these normal influences we have of how the world, the normal world, responds to all the distractions, all the antagonisms of daily life, all the different beings we encounter. The world, the normal world, dividing them up into the good, the bad, the other. So through mind training, we are transforming our minds in a very unique way to make a new habit of dealing with it differently, in a more spacious approach with wisdom. So like Peggy was saying earlier about making a habit in her mind, until you do it automatically, until there's a new habit in the mind. So think about this influence on your mind of these verses and how through that transformation, it plants deep seeds of positive imprints and karma for you in your mind that will help ripen in better conditions for you to practice Dharma. So it's that that helps you move along that path to enlightenment more quickly. And the reason we want to do that is that's the best way we can benefit all living beings as a fully enlightened being. So if you like that idea, feel free to fold that into your motivation and just take a moment right now to set that motivation for our session. And I'd like you to reflect on these verses. Determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I hold them most dear at all times. Just think of one person right now. There's one person in your mind and do a brief Tonglen with them. Just taking their suffering as you inhale, offering them your happiness. Let this suffering dissolve, a constricted knot of your self-cherishing at your heart center, at your core. And as you dissolve that, you have more spacious bliss in your mind to offer them. Think about these sentient beings as we discussed, how precious they are, because we are dependent on them for our enlightenment. Verse 2, to cut pride and develop humility. Wherever I am and whoever I am with, I shall always consider myself the lowest of all, and trained from the depths of my heart, hold others dear and supreme. Again, just think of this person, whomever you're thinking of, imagining holding them as dear and supreme, that you are lower than them, to generate humility in your mind. And you take anything from them that prevents you from feeling this way about them. As you inhale, let that dissolve your self-cherishing at your core. And you offer them this humility, this countering pride in your mind.
Venerable Amy, I think your mic is off.
Thank you. I cut it because the dogs were barking. Verse 3. This cuts a lack of mindfulness. And this is a newer translation from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. In all actions, I examine my mental continuum, and the minute a delusion arises, since it endangers myself and others, I forcefully confront and avert it. So again, as you're inhaling from whichever person you're visualizing, anything that takes you away from mindfully dealing with any negativity in your mind, you're inhaling that from them, taking any of those obstacles from them, letting it dissolve your self-cherishing at your core, and from a place of greater vigilance with your mind, greater mindfulness, you offer that to the person, taking and giving. Please relax and slowly open your eyes. So there's also this way of doing Tonglen meditation, like we were just doing with each of these verses. So you're taking whatever that verse is about, and as you're taking from whomever you're visualizing, whether it's a replica of yourself or somebody you're working with, you're taking any obstacles from that person, letting it dissolve your self-cherishing, and then you offer them the positive part of it. We will do a Tonglen meditation at the end of the session that is more traditional like that, but there's ways you can also do with the 8 verses, and there's many ways to do Tonglen meditation. So we're going to work with verses 4 and 5 this evening. And let me just read verse 4. Whenever I see beings who are wicked in nature and overwhelmed by negative actions and heavy suffering, I hold such rare ones dear as if I'd found a precious treasure. Let's talk about this for a little bit. Okay. When we talk about wicked beings, we encounter, and at some point in life, you're going to have difficult people, difficult situations. We all know that. That's life and samsara. Right now, a lot of people are quarantining. They're not around a lot of people. Some people have been telling me in classes and things that it's an interesting time. They'll say, my mind's kind of peaceful, even with the pandemic. You know, they're able to work at home and they're not going out much. And somehow it's easier to deal with some challenging coworkers via Zoom. Like they don't have to see them all day. You know, they're in one session or they're doing their work without the Zoom call, and they're finding it more people that have that and are fortunate in that way. But the thing is, the pandemic is impermanent as well. It's going to change. The vaccines are coming out, and there could be a time at the end of next year, I would think, for the most part, when we're probably going to be engaging again, but a lot of people may end up working at home, may continue to work at home, but there's going to be somebody that shows up. How's your mind? How's your mind with that? These are the people we really don't want around us. Some of them are world leaders. You could see the volatility of the election cycle that we just went through in the States, as well as the polarization. So we have people that like this person and people that like that person. People that view this person as evil, or they view that person as evil. Doesn't make for a peaceful mind. Okay, so wicked beings, they're included in all living beings. So when you set up a motivation, as we just did, to reach enlightenment so I can benefit all living beings. Okay, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's emphasis is on all, the word all. And what we do is we have that idea, that theory, but the practice of it is I'm really happy to benefit the people that I like, the people that it's easy to be around. And I leave out those difficult people. So here we are, particularly singling out these, especially the difficult people, as being rare, okay, and even more precious than the other beings. How's that possible? Okay, and who are those that are wicked in nature? You have to examine them, okay? Certain people, as we know, are so overwhelmed with negative mind, okay? So people would say to me, oh, so a terrorist, like, are you gonna have compassion towards a terrorist? I've had that question in certain classes. And they go, well, how do you know? So then again, we want to break it down. And I've done exercises with most of you in the past, that when you're dealing with a difficult person, and I've led some meditations on it, one of the first things I start assessing is, as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, so do they. So do they. They want the same thing actually that I want. They want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. So then people say, yes, but they have a different way of going about getting their happiness than I do. Yes, that's true. And some of their happiness may involve harming others. And that's not something I would derive happiness from. But fundamentally, they want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. So you've heard that before. Okay. So, but the other things they'll say, well, how can they say that harming others is a benefit? Why would they find happiness in that? Simply because I would say their delusions are thicker. They're really obscured with heavy delusions. So on some level, could make people wicked in nature. That's what could make them really challenging. But they have heavy, heavy afflictions based from fundamental ignorance, anger, attachment, these three main poisonous states of mind. All of our negative minds stem from those three poisons. Okay. And certain people are so overwhelmed by negative mind, okay, that so then they end up doing really, really negative things, and then people hate them. We've seen it a million times on the planet. It's continual, okay. People don't want to be in the company or under the influence of these wicked, negative people, okay? And then we shun them and we reject them. We criticize them, we make fun of them, we bully them, like that. We don't vote for them, or whatever your thing is, okay? So whoever has strong afflictions are completely bound or held under the control of those negative minds. Think of that. You have heavy mental afflictions. You have a lot of obscuration. So you can't help but be negative and do negative things. It's another way to think about them. So first we want to kind of analyze them and see, like, who's really there? What's going on with them? Their affliction, okay, makes it very hard. And thinks this is the next level. It makes it really hard and rare for them to practice any virtue. Have we ever thought about that? So we just go, oh God, they're, what an idiot. But think about like being like, sometimes we want to take a good rebirth, we'd say, those that believe in reincarnation. We have this idea on the Buddhist path. Want to have a good rebirth and things. And then a lot of people will joke about, I don't want to end up in the hell realm. Like, I don't know how I would bear that. Like when you really think about the hell realms. But I also think about coming back on planet Earth as a human, but like in, a country like South Sudan as a woman, where I don't have a lot of rights and I'm living in a poor village and my day is spent like gathering water from like 2 miles away and living a life like that. And where that's all that I don't have a lot of choice over my life, and you just end up working, no education really to some degree. And so that's one that also is really like a disadvantage of thinking of that thing. But then when you think of somebody with heavy afflictions that causes harm, think about, I'd have less advantage, less choice in that realm. But what if I have heavy negative afflictions? Then for me to practice virtue, there's such a small window to get in there. It's so hard for me to practice virtue. Okay. So as a result, the habits of non-virtue in my mind as a wicked person become so strong, so powerful. Okay. So as a result of that, imagine what lies ahead for the wicked person. How much suffering, how much great and prolonged suffering. That's heavy. When you think about them, suddenly it's like, wow, that's a lot. They're not just an idiot. They're not just somebody, I wish they'd go away. It's like, that's a struggle. Think about if you were in that situation, okay? So through our own experience, we know how we're persuaded by our afflictions to behave in negative ways. And I don't think most of us are really harm people very badly. Okay, but we just see how we're still influenced, how our own habituation with these negative mind states makes it hard to change. makes it hard to set up new healthy patterns for our mind. So once we remember our own experience dealing with our afflictions, compassion arises for these people. It's not just them, I hate them, go away. It's kind of like, I do that sometimes. Maybe not inflicted the harm they may have, but wow, yeah, I've lashed out at people. I've snapped at people sometimes, you know, and where, really just causes suffering, but they've done it on such a grand scale. How much suffering are they going to go through? So then I kind of make it personal. They're not that different from me. Think about, they're not that different from us. Okay, but they're headed in a really bad direction. And sometimes that's even painful to think about. It's even painful to think about. Like sometimes when I think of terrorists, people that, plant a bomb in a place, strap a vest with bombs around somebody else to blow them up, or take people hostage, or, and I think, God, first of all, the mind that does it, and then the suffering they're creating for themselves. So heavy, so much pain there. Okay. So rather than just getting stuck in the selfish think of, I'm uncomfortable around this person, immediately self-cherishing is like, I'm not comfortable around them. Like, I want them to go away. That's what we think, but this is mind training again, transformation. We change the view. We change our attitude to think, what's their situation? What's their situation? When I lead that meditation on the challenging person, and I ask you to switch the one secret, that very deep form of generating bodhicitta, the secret one from Master Shantideva, equalizing, exchanging self with others, that method to develop bodhicitta, it has that switch where you exchange self with others, meaning it's an attitude. What would it be like to be them? What would it be like to be them? Okay. And you realize how disadvantaged they are, how disadvantaged, how handicapped, or how delusional in a way, but they can't help it because there's so much negative thinking. So very little chance to practice Dharma. And I don't think you'd have violent tendencies unless you had heavy delusions. Again, they are overwhelmed by suffering. The verse says, overwhelmed by suffering, overwhelmed by negative actions and heavy suffering. Generally, people we don't want to be bothered by another's intense suffering, do we? It's easier to avoid them. That's kind of the way of the world in general. There's some people that move into that space, but for the most part, most people are kind of like, we certainly might help somebody, a loved one, a friend, a neighbor who's going through a hard time, but then we're really happy we can go home. When you leave the hospital, you leave the nursing home from the visit, or whatever it is, to some degree. And there's some people who are caretakers like that all the time, very selfless hearts to some degree. Okay, but generally we don't want to be bothered too much by another's intense suffering. And again, it's easier to avoid them, but these people are not suffering. These people are not suffering from anger particularly, but more overwhelmed with the results of their own heavy karma accumulated in the past. So it grows compassion in your heart to think about this situation with them. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, really the way of practicing Dharma, and even Pema Chodron says the same thing, it's leaning into the sharp edges. Lama Zopa Rinpoche is really like about welcoming problems. You get to a point, higher level of realization, I suppose, you're welcoming the problems. You want the problems. Why? Because it really transforms your mind. Bigger opportunity to transform your mind when you're working with it. Now, it's not about being masochists. I don't mean that. We're not inflicting harm on ourselves, but the harm is going to show up at some point. The difficulty is going to show up. Can you use it? The more it shows up, the better I get to practice with it. So when you understand the disadvantages that these wicked beings have, and you see how hard it is for them to behave well, okay? So they in a sense become even more worthy of our attention and our goodwill, because I have a bigger opportunity here to practice goodwill and compassion in relation to this person. They're having a harder time, less opportunity to practice virtue, to create positive karmic seeds. They may be completely unaware of it and mucking up all the time. So more of an opportunity for me to view them in a different way. Okay. And it's hard. It's even kind of shameful for us, right? To think, oh, they're too sick. They're too needy. They're too badly behaved for my time and effort. That's why we had the humility verse first. We've already worked on the humility so that I realize, like, I'm holding them higher than me to get a better view, to look, to see. It's hard when somebody's below you to see beyond your nose sometimes. When they're higher, you can sometimes get a better view. So we've already done that humility to kind of get the humility going so that I don't think I'm any better, like, oh, they're too nasty, like that. It is not only that attitude that's shameful to say, oh, they're not worthy of me, they're too sick, too needy. Okay. In addition to being worthy of our compassion, this person should be seen as someone extremely precious. We can train to see them that way. Because if we ourselves are able to develop compassion and love for beings like that, then it's going to be really easy for us to have that for all beings. Okay? If you can practice it with the wicked person, the evil person, the nasty person, you get good with that, then everybody else just falls in. Because these people are the hardest cases. So they become very precious to develop love and compassion towards. Because we can develop it towards them, then it can make the love and compassion we feel, again, for all other beings easier. Okay. When trying to generate compassion, this is on another level for somebody who has chronic pain or illness. Okay. You may not have a personal experience of having chronic pain to draw on. Okay. But why not remember a small pain that you have? Okay. Maybe you had a really bad headache for a day. Maybe you broke your leg or pulled a muscle in your back. And for a week, that back spasm kind of took over, but it was only a week. It wasn't 10 years. I know some people that have been in pain. Some of you know people in pain for years. I hope it's not any of you, but we all know people like this, okay? They wake up with the pain. It's there all day long, manipulating them. They go to sleep in the pain. They'd like to wake up with something else, but it's been years. So again, we have pain for a week, then draw on that experience when you're working with somebody that has chronic pain or illness. Think about your physical discomfort, even on that small scale, how uncomfortable it was, how you really couldn't do what you wanted to do that week or that day because it kept coming up, and the pills you had to take and the things that got disrupted and the meetings you didn't want to have and the work you didn't want to do. Well, they have this their whole lives. So it's a way to, again, get into their experience, empathy. Put yourself in their position. Put yourself in their position. Remember instances of your own heavy afflictions, perhaps, as well. And when our own afflictions or suffering arise, if we examine our own experience at the time, then we see how difficult it is to control our mind at the time. So as a result, it gives you more understanding of how the other person feels, how the evil, wicked person feels. We see how trapped they are. How we're able to put ourselves in that position. So empathy and compassion arise like that. I'm starting to see them as precious because it's a little bit of a mirror from my mind, a little check-in there from my mind. And often if you hear about the lives of some, let's say it's a public figure, and you hear about the early life of this person who's really what we might label difficult or evil, or and you hear about their early life, they often had a really challenging early life. There was some sort of trauma, incredible difficult pattern that went through their early life. Okay. And then you realize, wow, they didn't really have the love, the nurturing, the education, the care like that. Never had any ability. Had struggles for food and shelter and clothing and what else? Were horribly abused, perhaps. Okay, the worst thing we can do then is add to their rejection. Because that person from that space often feels already lonely and rejected, and they act out from there. Okay. So the last thing we want to do is add to that. Add to that by, again, casting them off, ignoring them, putting them to the side, thinking they're too difficult to help. They're too annoying to be around. Like that. So we kind of work with it from there, slowly, step by step. Let you do what your mind is able to do. You don't take everybody on at first. You do what your mind is able to do. It's a shift in the mind. It's really an attitude. It's a shift in the mind. Like that. And again, because we've already studied about, we went through self-grasping, self-cherishing, and the disadvantages of self-cherishing, the advantages of cherishing others. We talked a bit about that, but also about how we are dependent on sentient beings for our enlightenment. So we need this person. Without depending on this difficult person, enlightenment is impossible. We can't grow bodhicitta. We can't develop bodhicitta. We never get to experience the fact of them being a precious, rare treasure without bodhicitta, without that wish. So I need them in order to develop that. Sometimes, though, I know it can be sensible with some people not to approach them. If somebody's really dangerous, this is not about, in a blind alley late at night, you're going to, I heard there's a murderer that hangs out here. No, let's be wise. We need to use our wisdom. You're not going to put yourself in a situation like that, but it's when somebody comes up and we know one of the things, we just came through an election cycle that was very divisive and exhausting for everyone in general. If you were talking about it with people, and people love to talk about it to a degree, and this person and that person. And some people really get on to, how Trump has mishandled this or that, and they really attack him. It's amazing. But what happens is people get into these heated arguments, as you've heard or seen or been a party to. And it doesn't bother him at all. He doesn't know. But look what it's doing to your mind. And I've seen people, like, friendships break up and people really alienated and fighting with each other. And then they go home and they sulk and then they can't sleep. And why do you need that in your mind? He's a sentient being. He's included in all living beings, or whoever other political person you like or don't like, right? So the more I could find compassion for somebody I don't like, a leader I don't like, the more I have compassion in my heart, the less it disturbs my mind. And it puts that bubble of compassion out there on the planet. That ripple goes out. And my mind's not disturbed. I'm not losing sleep over, they make these laws. They don't enact laws and they don't do their job. And I don't need to be bothered. You do what you can do. If you want to get involved, you can volunteer for whatever, and you let go. You let it go. You live your life and you do the best you can. And fortunately, we can study Dharma and practice Dharma. It's the best thing that's out there. Yeah. So again, rather than having this, nebulous murderer out there we're going to deal with, it's just an attitude. But this verse also is very much about general people in our life, the people that can be really angry, really annoying, who appear that way to you and to others. And you might even have where everybody feels this way in the office about this person, so they're bad. And they get to be, like, every office I know that I've ever worked in, every Dharma center, there's a shadow. There's a shadow person. And do you know what I mean by that? There's always somebody that everybody gets to blame. So you have to analyze. A lot of the Dharma centers were like, I want to say, should I say functional families? I'd say sometimes dysfunctional families. Dharma centers that were residential centers would take on kind of roles of your family. And, so people would get into these different roles, and there was definitely always some odd person out that somehow was a little strange or was always interrupting in the meetings, and then would get labeled, and then people would start talking about them and not wanting to be around them and alienating them just like that. So those are the people we want to work with. Those are the people we want to work with. And it's challenging, but we can do it. We can definitely do it. And then what's also helpful with this verse and with this person, I find it's really good to try to find a way to relate to them. Try to find a healthy way to relate to them. You can do this, okay? You try to win their trust. You try to create a healthy relationship. Become friends with them, no matter how crazy that seems, okay? By remembering their unique importance, okay? So you could decide they're no good. Well, then you've lost the opportunity. You've lost the opportunity. Our approach with any person, it would be nice if we are open and accepting. And we all know people in our lives that are always really open and accepting. And it's refreshing to be around them. We know we're not being judged. They're not holding us to a certain standard and expecting things and critical, overly critical. So you try. And if their behavior is so bad that you can't do much for them, okay? It's okay to kind of let it go and move on, but your attitude towards them is always, is not just to get rid of them. Your attitude should be peaceful, kind, always trying to consider what's the best response towards them, what's the best way to kind of be here with them. Okay. So there's practical things you can do. I've mentioned some of these in classes before, and simple things. I mentioned I worked at a magazine in San Francisco for a couple of years. And there was a guy, when I was new there, I mentioned this story that was very difficult. And I could tell the first 2 weeks that nobody liked him in the office. And we had an open top office, so there weren't shut offices. You could hear what was going on in different offices, and I'd hear him sometimes being rude to people and kind of raising his voice. And I was kind of scared of him. I had to do a project, and I was a new Buddhist at the time. And so I went to a Buddhist retreat one weekend, and they were talking about bodhicitta and how to be kind of the bodhisattva in the office, or how bodhisattvas would operate. So I was kind of interested in that. I thought that sounded interesting. And it said, for instance, if you're in your office, a bodhisattva anticipates, like if you come into a bodhisattva's home, they anticipate what you would like. Would you like something to eat or drink? They watch your eyes to see where your eyes go over to the candy bowl. And then they go, oh, do you want some candy? So one of my things is I decided I would learn what my 30 coworkers drank at coffee or tea and how they took their coffee. It was like a little game I had with myself. I learned that he took coffee with cream, no sugar. I learned that. And then it took me 2 more weeks. I had to do a project with him, and I thought I have to figure out a way to get on with this guy. Like, it's just going to be horrible I'm afraid of him. He's intimidating. Then he's just going to be yelling at me the whole time. So I decided I'm going to get him a cup of coffee. It took me 2 weeks or so to do that, to get up the nerve. But I also needed to find the appropriate time to do it. Like, meaning he'd have to be finished coffee and want another cup. And anyway, the whole thing happened, and I went in when I needed to make it natural. Again, I'm really trying. It's like he was a friend. I was seeing him as a friend. The way I would do it for a friend, would you like a cup of coffee? I wanted to make it like that, natural. So finally, an opportunity came up. I had my paper. I had to go in to his office to deliver something. His cup was mostly empty. I had my cup because I'm going to the coffee machine anyway. I thought that was natural. Would you like a cup of coffee? I said, cream, no sugar, right? Just natural, not, that was disarmed him. Nobody had ever taken any interest to know how he drank his coffee. It was a really minor little thing. It wasn't that I'm any great being, right? He didn't know what to say. Silence. Nobody had ever gotten him a cup of coffee. Nobody wanted to be near him, so he's like, and then he fortunately handed me, he said, oh, okay. Gave me his cup. Great. And then you go out and you make a really nice cup of coffee. You can't kind of make coffee, put salt in it and then go, here, jerk. Okay. I went out, I made a really nice cup of coffee like I would make for myself or a friend. Came back into his office, no, didn't make a big deal about it, and just handed it and said, here you go, enjoy, and left. Simple little kindness, simple little act of kindness. Really simple. I mean, it wasn't so simple for me because I had to plan the whole thing out. I was so nervous, but something like that, genuine though. And that was it. We were fine. We were friends after that. Friends after. He was really open to me, happy to work with me. And the poor guy was just a mess from childhood. Like when I heard, just terrible stuff. So he was terrified by everybody in the office, like a chained dog and like that. So there's simple things to create that relationship with that person, to find a healthy way, whether it's genuinely complimenting them on their appearance, their shoes, or their hair looks really good, the sweater, but it has to be genuine so that they suddenly are open because they got positive feedback from you. That transforms everything because all they ever get from everybody else is hostility. And whatever they're doing, they're never doing it right. They're not doing the thing right. They're not pleasing them. But from you, they get something positive. So it's possible to do that. It's really easy. All of us can do that. So again, what happens is we normally have this focus of our own happiness. There's the self-cherishing. We normally get this focus, I want to be happy. I don't really want this person in my scene because they're difficult. Okay, they're disruptive to my situation. So then you develop aversion. Okay, even before you have any interaction with them, like I already heard about this guy. I didn't really have any interaction, but I'd heard him over the walls. I heard other people talk about him. I labeled them bad from the start. That's how everybody in the office saw him. Other people, you've seen that with people, before you even meet them, somebody tells you about them. She's like this. So then your whole view gets colored. It's a shame like that, okay? But again, if you can keep the practice of kindness, approaching with kindness, you find out something more about them. We don't get so influenced. Sometimes I've said to people, no, don't tell me, let me just meet them. I don't want to hear, I don't want to be colored by any views. And they'll be like, oh, okay. Like when somebody starts to tell you about the movie you want to see, there's somebody I know that's always has to, and they tell you, and I'm like, please don't say anymore. I want to see it fresh. I don't want to be influenced by waiting for that act to happen, that scene at the end or something. It's the same thing when I meet a new person. I don't want to be influenced by, especially if somebody has a negative opinion. If they have a positive opinion, it's great to hear this is going to be a really wonderful experience, a fresh, fun person like that. So by approaching them in this way, you often find it's not, by approaching them with this fresh perspective, you often find it's not as hard as you thought, and it stops a difficult situation from developing. That's verse 4. Verse 5. When out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I accept defeat and offer the victory to others. Again, when out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse or the like, I accept defeat and offer the victory to others. This is the famous verse number 5, offer the victory, okay? This is about, again, how we normally feel when we're criticized or mistreated, okay? It's like we've lost our way. We want to argue back. We want to tell the person we don't really do that. We want to win, okay? This is the opposite of that. So the other way is the way most of the world responds. I want to be on top. I want to prove myself. I want to be accepted. I want to succeed. Okay. Here we are offering, accepting defeat, which most people, I mean, we're having this go on right now with the election. Okay. And offering the victory to others. When normally we again want to prove that we're right. We're not as bad as they pointed out. Okay. We want to have the last word generally. That's the kind of the normal thinking. So we're trying to find extraordinary thinking instead of ordinary thinking. Okay. And one thing that's helpful is sometimes somebody will say something critical to you. Sometimes they'll do it in anger, in a mean way. And sometimes I've heard people, because things got very volatile in the country this past year, and then people are stressed anyway because of the pandemic, and some people are ill, and some people have lost people, and some people are struggling financially. It's a very difficult time like that. So everybody's got this edge and a bit stressed, a lot of people. So then if somebody, so what happens is offhand remarks come out and people say the wrong thing. And some people have said to me, so what should I say? How should I respond? What's the Buddhist response to this? They said, I didn't know what to say. It went by too quickly and I didn't really catch it. And sometimes that's not such a bad thing. Okay. Like I don't worry so much now that I didn't have the response all ready to go for the negative barb that comes in. Okay. If it takes you a minute to think about it, and maybe it's too late then to respond, sometimes that can play to your advantage. Why? Because what I might have said may have created some negative karma in my mind. I might not have said the right thing. I might have blurted something out without thinking much, or I might have ended up putting myself down, which really wasn't the right response either. So sometimes that's not, don't be too worried. That's not such a terrible thing. In worldly terms, if somebody is always accepting defeat and offering the victory to others, some people see them as weak and they'll say, well, that's not good, you know. But from the point of view of really trying to develop spiritual qualities, accepting the defeat and offering the victory needs to come with from a very sincere place of trying to work on your own negative mind. That's where it comes from. You know, I'm not just a doormat. I'm really trying to work on it and looking at how to diffuse a negative situation and a negatively volatile situation. So in some ways, it's irrelevant what other people think as to whether it's a good way to behave or not, if you're doing this questioning coming from a sincere place. So the question you really want to ask is this behavior really trying to counteract negative attitudes within me? Meaning my accepting defeat and offering the victory to others. Is that behavior really trying to counteract negative attitudes within me? So rather than what they're saying, and they're saying is again, that's Dharma. Am I counteracting negative attitudes in my mind? Countering delusion in my mind? Rather than thinking, I can criticize my actions, but nobody else is allowed to. Sometimes we get hooked into that. Okay. I'm going along quite nicely and I don't need anyone right now to point out my faults. I'm okay. Okay. So again, we need to expect problems. They're going to come. Our minds are not, I don't know your mind, but often our minds are not purified enough. That means problems are going to arise. I've got some negative seed in my consciousness, in my mind. So we need to expect problems and understand the reasons why it's necessary to follow the advice in these verses. A worldly response normally to violence is violence. We've seen in the world that's not helpful. That's not helpful. And isn't it interesting, the karma of our planet? There's always war somewhere on our planet. Now, I know there's a lot of peaceful situations too on the planet. And you may actually live in a very peaceful place. I think I live in a relatively peaceful neighborhood. I'm very fortunate like that. So we do have these pockets, but it also makes me sad where, you know, the latest thing you see in the news and it's going to be some often violent thing going on. I mean, right now the pandemic is the major thing, but then they just had the thing with Turkey and, that now that little area. And then before it was this part of the world, and then it's that part of the world, and just moving around. Afghanistan and Iraq and then Iran. And it's a shame that, we're in a world system. Imagine a place, if you can create a cause that you go to a place that's peaceful. They don't even have a word, war. Can you imagine? So, and, parents get frustrated when children are fighting. They're told to stop fighting. And then you hear with kids, well, she touched me. He started it. He hit me first. You hear with kids. But the thing is, adults do the same thing. We just do it in more sophisticated ways. To justify it's the same coming out of self-focus, self-cherishing. Look at the Middle East, the Israelis and the Palestinians. That's been going on for countless centuries. That one's been going on. His Holiness once was asked to comment about the Middle East with that issue. And he said, sometimes you just have to let the karma burn out. Like everybody's tried to solve it. And they try, this peace plan and this leader and that person and this person flies over and nothing's really changed. Maybe there's just, but unfortunately retaliation, as we can see, is not in the least bit helpful and only creates more harm. So again, our remedy is to familiarize ourselves with the fact and the aim to take the loss and give the victory. To take the loss and give the victory, to diffuse this hostility, this negative tendency. So when we come under attack from somebody else, we can then respond more positively. Just look at the influence it has. I was thinking of His Holiness was asked a question. There's a film, an old film called Heart of Tibet, an old film when His Holiness taught in Los Angeles. I'm going to say, I think it was the first time I saw His Holiness, maybe 1988, I think it was. Yeah. And he taught in Los Angeles. And this is in the old days, in a sense, not the real old days, but that period where before His Holiness won the Nobel Peace Prize, before he had kind of the State Department recognize him so they would provide security. So who did security? Believe it or not, is we were asked at Vajrapani Institute. I wasn't living at the center yet. This is in California, but I was always going there. It was we didn't have a center in San Francisco at the time, an FPMT center. So Vajrapani had a connection with this center in Los Angeles, and they asked us to get a team of people together to do security for this big public talk. Can you imagine? Like, I know nothing about security, I can look at things, but I don't know what I'm doing. So we were all positioned around this huge auditorium in Los Angeles. I was in one of the balconies during this public talk, and we were just told to look out. I don't know what we were looking out for, look out for this or that. And I didn't have any earpiece or anything, but I forget how they were doing it. So, and His Holiness, so they made a film about that visit, not just about the lecture, but the visit with Geshe Gelton, who was one of my teachers, and beautiful Lama who ran a center down there. And His Holiness was asked about, didn't you make a mistake about compassion? Because it really looks like you lost your country because you didn't have an armed force. And, and His Holiness, disputed. He said, not at all. He said, if anything, he said that just would have created more harm and suffering for people. And the benefit that I saw with His Holiness's response of Tibet, the fact that one of the only benefits probably of the Tibetans losing their country is it forced 150,000 Tibetans, along with His Holiness, into exile outside of Tibet. And from there, Tibetan Buddhism spread to Westerners like myself. And then that was when the hippie generation met them in India and Nepal and places like that. And then they came to the United States and started teaching at some of our universities, and some of the centers started where we could invite them. So if not for that, and then as a result of His Holiness's nonviolence, and practicing compassion, he's awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And as a result of that, he got into the world view suddenly. Nobody really knew him. And then suddenly he's catapulted into the center ring for winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. And suddenly Tibetan Buddhism was on the map like that. So it was very beneficial that he practiced compassion. So again, when there's, you see sometimes the suffering that leaders of countries have caused because they're not able to accept defeat. They're not able to offer the victory. So it's very important for us at our level to come to terms and work with our mind now without having all that level of responsibility, of taking care of the whole world. Can we just take care of our minds? We have much less stress like that, much less pressure. And as a result, we have more time for the most part to practice. You don't have time if you're president of the United States to do much else. It's, like that. So it's very important for us to get a sense of how our minds and to get that under control, that I can quickly, again, we want to make it authentic so that I'm not just pretending that I'm offering you the victory and I'm really resentful. It's not coming from a resentful place. And again, this is a gradual process. This is a gradual process that we step by step work with our minds, okay? So it's very good reason to respond well, because any attack could be coming at any time. Some karma ripening, and suddenly somebody says something really rude to me, like that. And another thing is, if you're getting this from a lot of people that you behave in a certain way, I would have a little self-assessment. Do I do that? I remember at Vajrapani, the staff, they were so sweet. I worked with some wonderful people there. And one day we had a meeting, and I realized they had discussed this before because I had a certain work style, and they were really compassionate to very nicely, the way they very compassionately, patiently tell me what was going on for them and how hard it was for them. But they did it in such a loving way. I couldn't do anything but look at myself and kind of own and say, I've got to, and I said to them, I really want to reflect on that. Thank you. And it was so helpful to me, so helpful, especially doing it like that. But not everybody does it like that. Not everybody does it like that. So we work on this slowly, and we use our wisdom. We want to understand karmic cause and effect. I created the cause for this negative thing's happening to me. If I can just diffuse this right now, I may not have to repeat this again in a negative suffering way. It also helps us practice patience, develop the virtue of patience, one of the 6 perfections. So accepting defeat, offering the victory. Again, I want to go back to the doormat response. People say, but you're a doormat. A doormat response is to think you're powerless. Okay. And so anyone who attacks you, you accept that. But inside you get more and more depressed, more unhappy, angry, like that. That's not the kind of response we're talking about. What we're talking about is to accept the defeat and offer the victory. Again, no resentment. I take full responsibility that in the past I created the cause that this attack is happening right now. So accepting the defeat can include strong action. So we do our best. We do our best to work with it. And then others who mistreat me with abuse and the like. It's talking about any sorts of complaints, blame, accusation, but then we have greater abuse. We have greater abuse. People that have been abused as children, what happens? And one example, and if you have a highly realized being, this is hard to imagine, but so, and many of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's students have suffered from sexual abuse when they were younger, and they've discussed with Rinpoche. There was one woman, and it was in relation to her father, and she told Rinpoche, and Rinpoche said to her, it would be best if you got a very nice present and wrapped it up in a nice package and offered it to him and gave it to him. That was like Rinpoche's treatment. And the woman said, well, and just say to him that for whatever I have ever done to harm you, I am truly sorry. Really, really sorry. So she went back to Rinpoche and said, but no, Rinpoche, I was the one abused. It wasn't my father. I was the one that, and Rinpoche said, yes, I know. He said, that's my advice. So she had a lot of faith in Rinpoche. You see, Rinpoche is highly realized. So she did that. She decided to do it. And she said it was really hard, but she did it. And when she offered this gift and said that, and her father was somewhat old at the time, he broke down crying. And he started saying how horribly sorry he was for all the abuse he put on her. And he didn't know how to talk to her. He's been wanting to talk to her for ages. He didn't know how to start talking to her. He's been wanting to do this, and how tremendously sorry he is. So, I mean, it was a huge connection there of just a release between them, of him really taking ownership and owning that he had totally abused her and harmed her and like that. Amazing. So sometimes there's something which seems very extreme, but again, probably if you can consult with a highly realized being to get, and Rinpoche does that with certain students at times, that has been really, I've heard it being very, very effective, but it can be hard. It can be hard. So again, some people may want to also add therapy into something like that to give them more support in working with this particular verse, so that they're coming from a little bit more buoyancy, healthy perspective, but they have more support to do it as well, which may be an additional help like that. And then the other thing is knowing that there is a choice in the way we perceive someone's attack is also interesting and can be very good, because ordinary perception is they're attacking me. This is horrible. Okay. But we actually have a choice of how we want to perceive it. And what's difficult is when we're around influences, that we often come around influences that say otherwise. You should get him back. I can't believe that person snapped at you or yelled at you. You didn't deserve that, right? The only reason it happened is because I had karmic seeds in there that I created. So in a sense, I don't know if deserves the right way, but I deserved it because that was just ripening. But that's not how the world often sees it. I've heard that in my own family where they'll say something really different than the Dharma. So think about that. You have a choice in how you want to perceive the attack. I can hold on to how horrible, how evil that person is, and then I can stay rigid in that, holding on to my resentment, my fear, my depression, my anger. Okay. So that just ends up to be more harm. Okay. Depends on my own mind, how I see the situation around me. Do I see that as criticism, or do I see it as something helpful from the past? It's our choice, and it can make a big difference between perpetuating, okay, a cycle of existence, a negative cycling, or countering the cycle of existence, or just the cycle of that attack, that kind of habit, like that. And the other thing is, if we're not owning some of our negative stuff when we do get criticism, you might be at a meeting and you might have a work pattern and think like, is somebody going to bring up what I've done? Like there's always a tension that, I did the wrong thing. I said the wrong thing. Is somebody then going to bring it up? Where if they've brought it up, they've said it, I've owned it, I've dealt with it. It's release from that. Okay. The battle is really much more with your own mind, not wanting to accept what you did that was wrong. The practice here is to accept whatever you did that was wrong, and that it was because of self-cherishing. It's because of self-cherishing. Again, place all the blame on one, just your self-cherishing. So you can say, I hope those words do come out that criticize me, because I'm giving that to my self-cherishing. It's attacking my self-cherishing, not me. It's not attacking my goodness. It's attacking, I'm going to give it to my self-cherishing. You can think like that. And then you can actually sometimes have an opposite reaction, different reaction, where you start welcoming. Completely different state of mind to be in. Completely different state of mind. The more peaceful, one of relaxation, just by accepting who you are, where you are, admitting your faults, and sometimes even accepting more faults than I really have, which diffuses. Okay. And sometimes to make it lighter, when you hear criticism and a comments getting down into criticism about a group of people, and sometimes, just insert, I do that sometimes, and I'm trying to give that up. You just come there, just lightens up the whole thing, so they're not so rigidly holding on to that one situation. So just as a brief review of these 5 verses that we've covered so far, and I'll take some questions. Verse 1 advises us to consider all beings as dear and precious, to generate a feeling of equanimity and closeness to others, valuing them by seeing that they're the means by which we attain our goal of enlightenment. There's no other way to attain enlightenment other than depending on others. Verse 2 is about countering pride with humility. Seeing ourselves as the lowest of all is an antidote to pride. It is very important to ensure we don't have pride in our interactions with others, because there's no valid reason to feel more important than others. So that's the basis, that pride of many delusions. Verse 3, remember to be mindful. Recognize and avert delusions as soon as they arise. It's only by checking our thoughts that we can tell what sort of mind we have. When an afflictive mind is recognized, then quickly avert it. Verse 4 is about cherishing those of bad character and great misfortune. This group of people are in the greatest need of our compassion and are special in that they help give us a special opportunity to practice compassion. Because if we can develop compassion and cherish them as dear, we can easily cherish all beings. Verse 5. The advice here is to accept the defeat and give the victory to others whenever we are attacked. By understanding karmic cause and effect, be determined to avoid a bad response. The main point is to take care to protect our own and the other person's mind from creating further negative karma by quickly diffusing any dispute. So think about also, if we attack back, think about their mind if it makes them angrier. So we also want to protect their mind. Any questions? Patty.
Thank you, Venerable Amy. The syntax of your 8 verses, is that new on FPMT website? Because it's not exactly the wording that I have with the Discovering Buddhism at Home. And the ones that you're reading are definitely speaking to me more than the ones that are written here.
Okay, well, that must be because Lama Zopa Rinpoche has changed them. Okay, so what I'm reading from is the latest version from Lama Zopa Rinpoche as of 2 years ago. Rinpoche changes up these prayers, and this is the latest version that I kind of cut and pasted. So the thing is, with the 8 verses, there's many different translations of them. So it is nice to find one that you like. I happen to just like to use Rinpoche's because that's what's in our prayer book, and he's my main teacher. And so he has changed these up. And particularly some of them are not as changed, but verse 3 was more significantly changed at the last Light of the Path retreat. That's when they usually issue a new version of something. And obviously it's working for your mind. So
Are those the one in the latest retreat prayer book then?
It should be in the latest one, but it should be an amendment. So make sure what you can do is contact our education department, someone in the education department, and just ask them to point you to where's the latest version. Because what happens is the prayer book, I don't know the latest edition, the one I have, for instance, is 2016. So it's 4 years old. However, 2 years ago, I think we had a Light of the Path retreat. And I don't buy a new prayer book each time. And what they do is they issue a few pages and they'll say, these are changes now to the current prayer book that Rinpoche's made. And then what I do is just cut and paste them in my current prayer book. And this happened to be that version, which was cut and pasted in. So it may not, like he might say 2016 is the latest version, but it may have an older version of the 8 verses. So just say you'd like the latest version of the 8 verses, and you can add it to that prayer book.
Thank you.
And Venerable Amy?
Yes.
Hi, it's Rebecca. The email, if you didn't receive the email that I sent at the beginning of the course, let me know. I'm happy to forward it to you. In that email, there is a link to the 2019 8 verses PDF that you can download on FPMT. And it's a free download. If you'd like to make a donation, of course, they would appreciate it, but it is a PDF that is free to download. It's in that email and it says 8 verses and it's got 2019 edition. So I think that is the most recent.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you, Rebecca. That's wonderful. That's great because that one probably, it may even be newer than the ones I have. So that would be great. I know usually at Light of the Path, which was postponed this year, we're supposed, then we would get any new version of that. And so I should have a look at that as well to make sure I have the newest version. Thank you. Yes, Robert.
Hi. Even from the last couple of weeks we've been off, I'm even trying more to look at everyone, like you say, as we need everybody. But I feel kind of guilty, like I need everyone, which we all do. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like I feel almost guilty. I feel like I'm doing it more for me than for that person. Which being nice is nice anyways, obviously, right? But I just feel.
Well, I think more than just you to say I need, it's more like you do reach a point on the path where I need to get enlightened really and get out of this mess to really fully benefit others, right? Benefit other beings. So you kind of come to a place like that, but you never lose your motivation with it. So His Holiness would say, then be selfish like that. Like, meaning you're practicing Dharma. So you realize there's certain thinking you want to do, but mainly think about the self-cherishing so that you're trying to practice a certain way. And if there's negativity or something, put it on the self-cherishing rather than you, because you need to practice in a certain way to get enlightened. So that's okay if you have that motivation that the reason you're doing it is to benefit all beings perfectly. And it's not so much focus on the I need, it's more like realizing the preciousness of these beings in order to get enlightened. I'm dependent on them.
Just to be clear, I do realize that. It's just I get this nagging voice like, oh, look at you, like trying to, you understand what I'm saying? I'm sure you've heard this before, quite frankly,
Sure.
So that's
Sure.
all. But I'm not like being fake about it. I do wish everyone well,
No, you sound very authentic. I think it's good to discern and check the teachings up like that and pull them apart and things and see what it does in your mind, but realize you're on the path, you're practicing Dharma. That's really admirable. So sometimes I think we just need to relax and say, I'm doing the best I can, but it's good to just look at that mind when it comes up. And, we all have different cycles of guilt going around with different things. I think they're just influences, habits we have from different conditioning we've had like that. Sounds like you're doing fine. Just to look at it and have it come up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a note about send the email with the information. And Rebecca, if it's possible, could you send me that link of what the latest version, and I'll just check mine against that. I'd be curious to see if I have the latest one. That would be really helpful. I'm not sure I saw that, but that would be great. If
Of
that's
course.
possible. Thank you so much. Okay. So I can't lead the full Tonglen I was going to do right now. So we're going to do that next time. And thank you. There's the 8 verses right there. Actually, I'm just going to copy that so that I can save it for later. Okay, and have a look. So we're going to close with a brief Tonglen again. Just make a note of this before I lose it. Okay, there we go. And what I'd like you to do is to put a version, just sit comfortably again. And imagine yourself across from you, a replica of yourself seated across from you, facing you. You can just lightly close your eyes and just visualize as best as you can. And recently, Venerable Rene, who's a Swiss monk who lives in Washington State, he was leading several months of these teachings on Wednesdays. And we were doing some Tonglen practice in one of the sessions. And he was saying it's sometimes too hard to do the taking and the giving, like both the inhalation and the exhalation. So just focus on one. For instance, if you'd like to take the suffering from yourself and you know the different ways you suffer, and you want to just focus on that as you inhale. And again, remember at your core, at your heart center is a constricted knot of your self-cherishing. So when you take the suffering from your front generation of yourself, it only harms that. It only dissolves that self-cherishing. So if you'd like, you can just focus on that. Might be easier to work with. And again, remember the suffering we're bringing in, the suffering we're taking from the front visualization of ourself can be in any form you can imagine, different images, words that represent suffering, colored light rays. Let it dissolve your self-cherishing as best as you can. And as you exhale, just imagine you're getting more resources, more space to take on more of the suffering and allowing more of the dissolution of the self-cherishing. You can also visualize you inhale the suffering, and as you exhale, it dissolves the self-cherishing, that core, that knot at your heart. And may we dedicate, I'm going to bring up some dedication prayers. And I'll share my screen. And these are some of the prayers that Lama Zopa Rinpoche likes us to do right now for this COVID problem. Can people see those on your screen? Okay. Can still see them? Great. So whatever merit we've created from this time together, thank you so much for joining. It's lovely to see all of you. Can we invest it in our being able to really integrate these 8 verses into our minds and hearts, slowly, gradually, to begin to really shift our minds in a positive way so that it will help propel us along that path to enlightenment so we can be unlimited in helping all living beings. And I'd like to dedicate for all those with COVID to be healed instantly, and especially Donna and Gary Halterman in the Pennsylvania area, my old boyfriend's parents, and all the other beings to be healed instantly, and for the spread of the virus to be stopped and the vaccines to be effective and healthy for people to use as quickly as possible. And for anyone who's passed away from that or something else, may they immediately take a good rebirth to get enlightened, to benefit all. And also I'd like to dedicate to some people with serious illnesses right now, Norma Harris, Peter Kay, and Isabel Gonzalez. Isabel is in a nursing home in Austin. She's in her 90s. And the nursing home did great in April and May with very little COVID. There's 100 people in the nursing home. And a week ago, 22 residents had COVID. And then a few days later, 33 had it. And I don't have the count today. So I know her daughter, it's very disturbing. So these poor people, you know, in these situations. So for all those beings. Janju Senjo Rinpoche Make Panam Ge Gyurjig Ke Panyam Ba Me Ba Yi Gone Gondu Belwarjo. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses without exception of transmigratory beings never occur again. In all my lives never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. We're going to dedicate with emptiness. Excuse me. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, and the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. And the long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. For Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you so much. So next week, or just to give you a couple updates. So Saturday morning, if you want to join some of our COVID practices there, every Saturday through December, I do an 8 to 8:30 Eastern time slot. I think the info is on my website. And next week is Lamatzon Kappa Day, so next Thursday. And I think, is your center doing something, Tuptenkunga?
Yeah, well, actually, we are piggybacking on Shanti Deva with it because you're teaching us, and so we thought it would be nice to attend the
sweet.
Shanti Deva
So
because
we're gonna join together.
yeah, so Venerable Amy's leading, and if you'll go to our calendar, you will see the link to Shanti Deva, and you can register there. It would be nice if you register in advance, and if you're able and feel moved to give them an offering, that would be great. And then Tuptenkunga will also be giving them an offering because we're mooching in on their on their festivities. So yeah,
One thing-
so
Oh, yeah, and
hope-
one thing to explain about it, what happens is they have a cohort that is a yoga center. Their center is used as a yoga center and a Dharma center. I mean, they're closed now, but as a result, the yoga entity wanted them to use their whole registration program. It's just the way it works. So as a result, you have to register for all their pujas. You don't need to make a contribution if you can't do it. They're perfectly happy that way. You can, but as a result, and so people think they can just show up at the puja time, but you actually do need to register in advance, and then they give you a link. So what we're going to do is we do a Lama Chopa Tsog. We offer Tsog. It's more of a tantric practice, but it takes about an hour and a half. And because it's Lama Tsongkhapa Day, it's a great day to practice to do that for our patron saint. And it's a light offering festival. So if you want to set up candles, that's what we usually do at the centers, and put candles all around the stupas, but you can have them in your house. Electric lights, you can put up your Christmas lights. It's really about brightening up for the Northern Hemisphere, the darkest time of the year. And the monasteries go completely over the top. It's like nothing you've ever seen. But it is beautiful to do this hour and a half, and it's really an elaborate 7-limb prayer. And we get to make offerings, and you can set up whatever offerings you'd like in your home. And it's just a festive thing like that. So I'm going to leave that for about an hour and a half at 7 o'clock, I think, on December 10th. So we're going to skip, and then our next one, our last session will be December 17th on the 8 verses.
yeah, so we hope everyone will join us for Lama Tsongkhapa Day. And also just want to give a little plug. This is one of our last opportunities in person. Tenzin Osel is giving a talk for us on Saturday. And if you are planning to come and you haven't registered, please register, because we've actually increased our Zoom capacity. They charge us more, over 100 and then over 200. So Nicole, what you looked last time, what was it, 150 something? that we
Yeah.
have?
We're well over 190 now, 190.
That's
So
wonderful. Then do you send out a link? I think I registered. Do you send out a link or?
Yes,
already?
yeah,
the confirmation email would be in there.
Okay, I think I'll have to check if I got that. Okay, that's wonderful.
so I know we
I know,
have,
it's really very special to hear Osel. I think most of you know who he is, and the reincarnation of Lama Yeshe. Fantastic.
so please pre-register, because I know at Tuptenkunga we do have a strange habit of registering 5 minutes before class. And if we get, 50 people to do that, it could create some technical stuff. So it would just be really helpful if you are going to attend. Please go ahead and register so that we can be as prepared as possible. And again, that will be from noon, and we have been instructed to have every student logged on by 11:50. So I'm not, I don't know how I can do that, but please, if you can, log in 10 or 15 minutes early, and it should be around an hour. We don't know, it could go longer. So that's
That's
all I have.
wonderful. It's fantastic that he's going to give a talk for you. I'm so happy.
And we're so happy that you are giving us this course and these wonderful teachings. We appreciate it so much, Venerable Amy.
I'm so happy to join you. I miss all of you. And I hope it's not too long before we're in person again. Thank you all so much for joining. It's lovely to see all of you. And please take care. And maybe I'll see you this next week or in a couple of weeks, and enjoy.
Thank you, Venerable Amy.
Thank you, Venerable Amy.
Thank you, Venerable Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Venerable Amy.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.